All right, so this is part 6 of my active imagination story. Getting close to the end here. Hope you guys enjoy this. So here we go. All things join in the cave where life and death meet. Part 6. He was abandoned. No one truly wanted him. He always had to keep the wild boy away. But now he was the wild boy. The wild boy was his spirit, and the soulless people of this world hated him for it. He could not live in their world without lying and wearing masks, hiding from himself, hoping that somewhere in the world of people he would be loved. But no one loved him. Soulless creatures do not love. And thus he knew the truth. This was the meaning of his life. His hopes, his dreams, they didn't matter. The only thing all this had been about would be the flesh on his bones. They were there for some beast in the wilderness. That was the true meaning of his life. He was food. Food tricked by his own instincts to go out and find a meaningful life. But his search for meaning only led him to this death. This callous and terrifying truth made the boy scream in anger. If this was to be his end, he would go down kicking and screaming. The boy now roared. The wild beast inside of him took over. Suddenly his teeth became massive, and his fingernails turned into claws. The wounds on his body healed, and he leapt to his feet. The bear who had mutilated him was a mother in search of food for her and her cub. And he had been it, but no longer. He would not be a small creature, a sacrifice for beings that were indifferent to his existence and his well-being. He struck out and hit the unsuspecting mother bear in the head with such power she fell over dead in an instant. The forest was suddenly very quiet. For a moment, he was the master of this forest. But then he looked around and his heart stopped. As the sad eyes of the terrified cub now looked at him, huddled up against the wall of dirt in the bear's nest. He felt a great deal of regret at that moment. He killed this poor creature's mother, who loved it so much. He wished someone had loved him this way. He had stolen from this cub what had been stolen from himself, leaving it alone in the wilderness. He had committed the crime that had been committed against himself. Suddenly he felt like he was this cub that was now looking at a murderer with sad eyes. He could have simply accepted his fate. He could have just let himself be taken. What was his life worth anyway after all of this? No one wanted him, and he took the life of the one who wanted this cub to live and to become a beautiful, strong bear someday. Crushed by guilt, his wounds opened up again, and he was no longer the wild boy. Now he was just the unwanted boy again. He lay there with no thought but sadness. The tears welled up in him and streamed down his face. He had been nothing but a shadow creature all his life, and now he was a killer and a treacherous monster. The cub witnessed this sad, mutilated boy, and it began to feel sympathetic for this broken and torn apart child. It crawled up next to him, and it wanted to comfort him. It rubbed its head up against his cheek. He reached out and petted the poor cub. He would die soon, but this moment was sweet. This innocent creature seemed to care about him, even though he was a killer. What a sanguine end to his life. He did not want to leave this poor cub alone here, on its own to fend for itself. But what could he do now? His fate seemed to be sealed. His body was losing strength from the blood loss. He then remembered the beautiful feminine note he heard in the vision of the woman who loved him. He began singing it to the cub. The cub was deeply moved by the sound and drew even closer to him. It crawled on his chest and nestled there. He looked upon the cub, and its fur began to melt off of it, and underneath what was left behind was the sweetest human female baby he had ever seen. It was then he knew that this too was a part of him. Like the wild boy. The wild boy was his spirit that he had hid from the world, and this baby girl was his love that he hid from himself. The baby merged with him, and his body was healed. At that moment, a new love surged through him. He was now more himself than he had ever known possible. The colors of the world suddenly became very vibrant, and everything had a magical quality of unity. The spirit of life danced in many separate shapes and forms, and yet they were all one. He then felt not only his own pain, but the pain of the world that needed him. And he realized his true purpose in life was to do his part to lead the people of the world back to their spirits and back into their hearts, so that they could find love and joy like he had now. With this, the wilderness around him began to disappear. All right, so that's the end of part 6. Got one part left, part 7. I'll be releasing that soon. Hope you guys enjoyed.